Hi, welcome back to the foundation course on communication and soft skills. So we are going to focus only on speaking skills in this video tutorial, and you'll get certainly an idea about how do we improve on the speaking skills, which can help you clear your interviews, your job discussions with the prospective employers. So let's do a quick recap on what we did yesterday, that is on conversation skills. We spoke about certain interview tips that can assist you to make better decision and help you to clear the discussion as such. So there are 10 tips to improve on your interview performance, and you have to just be careful about the fact how do you perform and how do you really go about it. And to keep in mind, stop it, no? Okay, so the 10 tips to improve interview performance. The first one is practice good non-verbal communication. Like we've already discussed, non-verbal plays a very important role, and I want you guys to look at the board right now. Okay, so just give me one moment here. Fine, na? Confused yourself. So 10 tips to improve interview performance. We have to focus on few important things that we spoke today, and those are nothing but to practice your good non-verbal communication. So the first point to remember is your non-verbal communication skills. Okay. So non-verbal communication skill talks about your body language, and body language clearly states your postures and your gestures. So postures talks about your hand movements, and gestures talk about your simple eye contact, your facial expression and the smile on your face. So ensure that you follow that specifically, because in case that is not being followed, you might be not able to clear the discussion, because that is one of the most important way to communicate that you are confident, you are present for the discussion, and you can certainly be a right choice by the employer to be selected. The next thing to keep in mind is dress for the job or the company. That is, always keep in mind that a specific job role or the organization that you're associated with, they are very clear about how you present yourself. So in case you're very casual, in case you do not go by the company's dress policy, you might give out a different impression, you might give out a different message altogether in terms of you're not very keen about working with the company, or you're not serious about the job role. So keep that in mind. Don't talk too much. This is one of the tips that we have to give to people who are talkative, and you have to just ensure that you follow certain standards and certain policies, that over talking can also not help you clear your interview, but instead it can give you a negative impression about yourself. Don't be too familiar. That is, in case you have been coached about the interview or the job role, just ensure that you give out that specific information, but not giving don't overboard yourself by giving a lot of information. In case you do so, then it's going to be again a negative impression by the interviewer and the employer on you. Use appropriate language. That is, any casual language which is being spoken in a group of your friends or relatives or your family members cannot be entertained by the interviewer. So ensure that you follow certain standards in terms of having that accuracy, not just the accuracy but appropriateness in terms of what word choice you're selecting and what are the phrases that you'll be speaking. And understand, you form all the best impressions through these things. There is non-verbal communication, dressing for the job role, and by not talking too much and not being too familiar with what is being asked, and moving on to understand having that appropriate language skills in your communication. So don't be insane in terms of giving out a lot of information, and information such as which is not being accepted by a group, a professional group. So you have to be a right judge there in terms of not giving a lot of information which might be unacceptable. So take care to answer the questions. That is, you need to be very careful about the fact that the responses that has been spoken, of course they are recorded, either they are documented and recorded as well. See to that you have been too sensitive about not hurting anybody's sentiments. You're not being too direct or curt by giving out your own strong opinions about religion, gender or politics. These are the three important sensitive areas of concern, at least in a country like India, where you are not supposed to strongly give out your own opinion, because you never know, you might end up hurting somebody else's views. Unless and until you have been asked to speak and asked to give out your opinion, an advice would be to neutralize your response and state it, rather than just giving out strong opinions, words such as I hate the group, I hate so and so religion. So these are very strong words that can come out from a person, and unacceptable for a lot of reasons again. So be careful. So ask questions when need be. Do ask the questions, because you can showcase your confidence skills there, and you'll be of course getting the right and appropriate answer from the expected person who can share the right information with you. And do not appear desperate. This is one point that we did focus on yesterday while we were discussing these interview tips. That is, sounding desperation can take you into a different understanding altogether. It might not always be entertained. It is never understood by people that your desperation can be genuine again, but not always the acceptance level is high. So these are the 10 important interview tips that you're supposed to work on, and I'm sure success can certainly touch your feet. So once again, I'll give a round of information, and then we conclude to move on to the next topic of the day. So the 10 most important tips to improve your performance is practice good non-verbal communication, that is your body language. Dress for the job or the company. Don't talk too much, that is not being not overboarding yourself. Don't be insane in giving out a lot of information. Don't be too familiar with with the information about the company, about the job role. Keep in mind that you cannot be insane in giving out your own strong opinions about something. And don't talk too much, that is something you cannot be overboarding yourself. Take care to answer the questions and your responses appropriately. Ask questions and don't appear desperate. That is how we are concluding the important tips for the interview performance. Right now we will focus on the important topic that has been lined up for all of us, and the important topic for the day is your speaking skills. So how do I get to understand the fact that speaking can actually make your life easier, can make not just your day-to-day conversation, but also can help you crack that dream job of yours in a specific organization that you have all been aspiring for. So what do I have to keep in mind? So speaking skills are the skills that give us the ability to communicate effectively, and these are the skills that allow the speaker to convey the message in a passionate, thoughtful and convincing manner. So keep in mind speaking skills. Passionate, thoughtful, and considerate manner. Okay. So speaking skills helps you to convey information, a certain set of information, by being passionate, thoughtful and considerate. You can make your communication effective. You can make yourself as a best speaker, a speaker who is accepted. So once again, speaking skills are the skills that gives us the ability to communicate effectively, and these are these things can help or allow the speaker to convey the message in a passionate, thoughtful and considerate manner. So let's understand what is speaking all about, and then we'll move on. So speaking is the delivery of language through the mouth. So we all understand that we can communicate verbally and we can communicate non-verbally as well. So to give you a little information about how we can communicate, and this is something we did discuss yesterday as well. So communication, that is exchange of information, can happen through verbal and then through non-verbal as well. So non-verbal, your body language plays an important role. Verbal, we have speaking, that is what we are talking about today, and then we have writing skills. That is, I can speak and convey the information, I can write and convey the information. That is to do with your verbal. Non-verbal is your body language. So body language, like we've already discussed, postures, gestures, where you have to be very keen about how you're presenting yourself in terms of your confidence level, because your entire body language links and aligns to the fact how confident you are, and how confidently you can present yourself. So be careful in terms of giving out information while you are presenting, and with the focus on complete body language adherence, that is the accepted body language adherence. So speaking is the delivery of language through the mouth. To speak, you have to create sounds using many parts of your body, including the lungs, the vocal cords, your tongue, your teeth, your lips. Now this is something we have already dealt and spoken in pronunciation basics, where we have spoken about articulators, that is how a mouth organ can help you create that specific sound to give out a word, and a group of words can convey a meaning to allow the exchange of information happening. So keep in mind, speaking is the delivery of language through your mouth. To speak, we have to create sounds and using many parts of your body, including the lungs, vocal cords, your vocal tract, tongue, teeth and lips can assist you to create that specific sound and allows you to speak effectively if it is done as per the rule book. So when I say rule book, we have already understood the fact that we have certain sounds which gives vibration in English language, and we have certain sounds which do not vibrate in English language. So I'm supposed to go by the complete rule book, that I'm not supposed to give out vibration to sounds which do not need a vibration, and I'm supposed to follow the sounds which need vibration with vibration only. So when I follow the rule book, I achieve the excellent speaking experience as a speaker and as well as a listener who can get the information in one go rather than confusing the listener. So speaking is the second of the 4 language skills, and that's something we will understand in a while right now. So what are you, any idea about 4 language skills that we are talking now? So let me take this off. Okay, so any language, be it Hindi, Telugu or English, French, Spanish, anything for that matter, we have language skills such as speaking, reading, writing and listening. So any language to learn, you are supposed to follow these 4 language skills, and this is to do with any language that you intend to learn with the passion that you want to master that particular language. Now the rule book is, in order to learn a language, there's a methodology which is being followed, and this has been endorsed by a lot of departments who have done excellent research in English language. So Cambridge University has done excellent work, and even they have communicated for that matter, and the experts across the globe on English language coaching and training, they have communicated that the learning of language has to be followed in this model. So I start with listening, and then I move on to speaking, and then reading happens with the writing as the experience. So basically I start listening to people who are at my place when it comes to the first language that I have learnt. Then I sort of build up little bit of information, and I give out words, and that words can be formed in sentences and communication is happening. Maybe as a child I have moved on to school to study and read, and that's when the reading happens. And then in the same supervision we start learning about writing as well. So the method that you're supposed to follow to learn English language as well is something effectively this method, where listening, speaking, reading, writing is what you're focusing at. And this can certainly assist you to learn language and master at it. To keep in mind, speaking is the second of 4 language skills that we said. So it all starts with listening, and then we move on to speaking, and then reading happens with writing again. So in our own language, speaking is usually the second skill that we learn. So likewise, if Telugu is your first language, we have been focusing that we started listening to our parents, that is either mother or father talking when you were a child, and then we started listening to our brothers or sisters or maybe neighbors around your family, and that's how you learnt listening. And after listening came where you started to attempt certain words in Telugu language, if Telugu was your first a mother tongue or a first language. And then like I said, reading happened with writing as a focus. Either that was because you were asked to learn reading and writing back home, or maybe school assisted you to pick up these skills. 4 skills once again: listening, speaking, reading, writing. And we are discussing speaking skill, which is the second most important skill under language learning. So this vocalized form of language usually requires, so in our own language, speaking usually is the second language again. So any language that you speak. This vocalized form of language usually requires at least one listener. That is, you need to have listener while you're communicating, because it's bi-directional. In conversation skill, we have learned this term called bi-directional, that is, communication can only happen with the exchange of information between sender and receiver. So when I say sender, over here I am the sender, and if you guys are listening to me, you are the receiver. So it is always bi-directional. It cannot be with only single person that you can communicate, that is, I alone cannot communicate. I need to get the responses, I need to get the feedback, I need somebody who has to listen to my exchange of information. So keep that in mind. So 2 or more people speak or talk to each other. The conversation is called a dialogue. Like I said, bi-directional. A dialogue is in between 2 people. Monologue is something only you're talking and you're not expecting a response, and there's no feedback which is happening, and there's no listener in your communication. So remember, monologue and dialogue, there is a huge difference, and every communication should be a dialogue. That is, you need to expect a response from the listener. You need to get the appropriate response again of the question which has been asked, or maybe the statement and the responses which has been shared. Speech can flow naturally from one person to another in the dialogue. So that is, you're allowing the person to listen to you, and you're also giving a check whether the person has understood your understood the information, and if the person has any specific questions to ask by, or you stop and you check there. So there's a feedback which is happening naturally out there, and you're allowing the person to listen and communicate back. So speech can flow naturally from one person to another in the form of dialogue. It can also be planned and rehearsed, as in the delivery of speech or representation. So we have to remember that there's a dialogue which happens, and the other thing to keep in mind is speeches or speaking always are better when they are rehearsed and planned. So every great speaker today in the world has gone through this stages of rehearsing, mastering it, and then publicly speaking. Pick up any politician, pick up any public celebrity. They all have to go through the stages of planning and rehearsing. Until unless they do so, they cannot achieve the mastery over language skills. So that's something we have to keep in mind. So rehearsing and planning, as in the delivery of speech or presentations for that matter. So in presentations as well, which is our next topic for the day, what's happening, there's a information download that is being given to the listeners, there's a information exchange that has been happening in the presentation. So in speaking and presentation, both has to be rehearsed and very well planned. Of course, some people talk to themselves in some English learners, with some English learners, and there's practice that can happen, but however, standing alone in front of the mirror. So when you have a partner to exchange and speak, you can certainly achieve what you want to achieve in terms of bettering your communication. But in case you do not have an exchange of communication with the partner or dialogue which is happening while you're practicing speaking, one suggestive example which has been always given out, which is proven through a lot of research work, and it has been one of the tried and tested methods, which basically even I tried it out too. So you can stand in front of the mirror, practice till you get certain information up, that is maybe your body language which can be looked upon. You can really look upon your facial expression, you can look upon certain other things such as how you're communicating, how the sounds which have been effectively spoken and given out. So a mirror practice is one of the suggestive practices to improve and work on your speaking skills. So speaking can be formal and informal both, like we have a lot of communication which are formally written and informally written as well. So let me put this on the board for your better understanding. So like I said, speech has to be planned and rehearsed. And then we have speaking skills, which are again further distinguished to understand it as formal and informal. So conversation happens in many contexts. The context could be a day-to-day communication which is happening with somebody at a grocery store, communication happening at workplace, communication happening at a university or at a college, or a dialogue happening with your professor or at a school. So keep in mind that you have to really twist yourself in terms of the thinking to whom you're talking with. So in case you're talking to a friend, you can certainly go by this form if you are comfortable and your friend has been very comfortable with this form of speaking. In case you have been always formal with your friend, then the same thing can be followed. But there are certain specific contexts that is they rigidly follow certain specific forms, and we all have to abide by it. So when it comes to interview, now that we are all here for the interview skills, and we are eventually communicating effectively only to learn how to clear your interviews and discussion. So keep in mind formal is one of the forms that you're supposed to follow, and formal speaking skills is something accepted, unlike informal, because you come out as an unprofessional person in case informal speaking is being practiced or spoken in the discussion. And as it is a formal context, the expectations from the interviewer and the process of interview is always this: until the person asks you to be comfortable and be a little informal, but still the advice would be go ahead, link yourself towards understanding more about the formal form of speaking. So speaking can be formal and informal, like we just discussed. Informal speaking is typically used with family, friends, or people you know well. So get this very clear, only for the people whom you know well is where you would be communicating in informal speaking. through informal speaking, but formal speaking occurs in business or academic situations, or where you're meeting people at a business conference, or you're meeting people for the first time. There's always formal communication that you're supposed to follow and not adhere by your informal way of speaking. So keep in mind, once again, informal speaking is typically used with your family, friends, or people you know really well. Formal speaking occurs in business, academic situations, or when you meet somebody for the first time. That's something we have to keep a very good clarity on. And moving on to understand, speaking is probably the language skill that most language learner will have to perfect as soon as possible, because we all go through the stages of not being accepted in certain context. You might be the greatest speaker at your university or college level, but your acceptance or probably the comprehension of your language could be little catchy, little difficult by the other set of context of listeners. So we all have to work towards it, and it is something not one time mastery achievement that you can gain. You have to, like you and me, we all have to learn throughout our life. Only then there is a learning which is happening, and you will be knowing how to specifically put across the context towards formal and informal way of speaking there. Okay, so keep in mind, speaking is probably the language skill that most language learners have to and need to perfect as soon as possible. It is used to be only language skill that was very difficult to practice as part of one of the language skills, and it is still one of the important and little difficult language skill to practice, but it's not impossible. This is no longer the case. English learners can practice speaking online using lot of various means through the help of technology these days. Now that we have technology presence, such as a Skype call with a friend of yours, or probably a Skype call with a native speaker to improve on your communication. There's a lot of video conferencing channels and platforms as well, where you can certainly put your mind and get yourself through for the practice sake, and all you need is just one partner to practice. So they all can record your information, and in case you're doing it by your own self, more like a monologue, so you have channels of these kind of platforms such as Skype or a lot of other video conferencing calls, where you can practice and hear it back as well for this self-analysis of how you performed and how you're speaking. So keep that in mind. And so in general, then, what is speaking all about? So speaking is interactive process of constructing meaning that involves producing and receiving, or rather processing information. So this is a definition given by a lot of language experts. I repeat, what is speaking? Speaking is an interactive process. That is, an interaction is happening between you and the listener, and it helps you to construct the right meaning that involves producing and receiving the or processing the information. So its form and meaning are dependent on the context. Like I said, speaking is always an interaction, but its form is totally dependent on the fact whether you're giving out formal speech, or informally you're interacting with the people. So you have to be very vigilant of the fact whether the context is formal or informal, and you switch between it. So there are a lot of collective experiences for people where they tried attempting formal, but the audience turned out to be informal, or the context was informal. And likewise, informal context, and we tried attempting to be informal again, and which you did succeeded in this attempt of giving that specific or right form of speaking skills. So keeping in mind, it has often been a spontaneous decision that you're supposed to make, and open-ended and evolving questions can certainly help you to get certain specific information from the audience, from your listeners, as to what context or what form of speaking skills that you can pick up and you can continue speaking. So we all have collective experiences. Collective experiences could be where you have been invited for a formal speech, but it turned out to be an informal context altogether. Likewise, you've been invited or you've been part of a family function or a get together of your family, where we all expect that to be informal, always, at least in all the occasions, but maybe it turned out to be a little more formal in terms of its context. So we have all these experiences again. So you need to be right judge and think appropriately, think correctly as to what form is you're trying to apply, and that is how it can make your entire experience better. So keeping in mind the other aspects, that is examples, if I have to really talk about, so can I help you or may I help you? These are two different statements which can give same meaning, but it might also make you sound more formal and make you sound informal as well in the same manner. So let's understand this. Okay. Can I help you is one question form, and the other question is, may I help you? Okay, so you might end up getting responses for these two questions, and but the only difference that lies is your formal and informal way of communicating. So keep in mind, each time I add a may to the word, I am communicating. I am communicating in a way that I am more sophisticated, and I am following soft skills as one of the most important element that I am aligning it to my communication. So keep in mind, may I help you is the most accepted form of communication, at least in formal context. And when I say can I help you, is not regarded statement in a formal context. So keep in mind, each time when I add may, could, would, I add lot of formality to it, and I also add an element of soft skills, which is the agenda of all these video learning and video tutorial. So this is, we all have to understand, certain word choice can make you go a long way, and certain word choice can actually not make you or allow you to create that first impressions, which are the lasting and the best impressions, to believe that you are good fit for the job, or believe that you're the right choice for the employer. So likewise in the written communication as well, now that we are talking so much about formal speaking, in written communication as well, I have to keep in mind that the way I write formally and is again different from the way I communicate informally. So at workplace, at least, you have to really go by formal writing, that is also the positive tone of writing. We will discuss this when we come to the writing skills module. And informally is just not accepted in the writing environment, at least in the context of formal workplace. But when you're exchanging information between your family member or a friend of yours, then you can certainly go ahead and take up the form of informal writing. So what a good speaker does, now that we're talking so much about formal, informal context and form. So what does a speaker does? A speaker's skills and speech habits have an impact on the success or the exchange of information he or she is building up to. So speakers must be able to anticipate and then produce the exactness in your speech patterns of specific situation. That is, you have to be mindful, you have to be very careful on the choice of word that you're selecting, and the choice of context is something again important too. With the fact, if you're not been comfortable to talk in formal context, try to plan and rehearse your speech and then give out the information rather than attempting and being called as informal. So how can we do this? There must be also a lot of options as a speaker or while you're practicing, where you can certainly build up to make up your formal speaking skills. So examples such as turn taking, rephrasing, providing feedback or redirecting. So these are also different forms of speaking styles that you can inherent in your communication and long going. For example, a learner involved in the exchange with the salesperson describes previously that the information exchange which happened, the customer was not happy in at least a sales environment. And if the conversation was not accepted by the listener, that is a customer, then there have to be something with regard to our communication as a salesperson. So recall a time or an instance in your life where you were a customer and you were just not happy with the way the communication has been rolled out, or the information which has been given to you, and you really wanted to give a feedback to the person who was talking because you are not able to understand, and you are not just about happy about the entire experience of the communication. So keep in mind, then we have an element of vocabulary to keep in line as well while we are talking so much about speaking and improving on speaking skills too. So how do we actually put emphasis on words? That is, the right choice of words can really make you move on and create that impressions, and without that right choice of words you are not going to create the impression that you are intending to do so. So keep this as part of your emphasis. And in general outline of a speaking lesson, that is, in case you are looking out to practice and keep practice as part of the routine, speaking lessons can follow the usual pattern of preparation, presentation, practice, evaluation and extension. So keeping in mind these elements, that is a speaking typical practice lesson. So let me write this for you all. Speaking practice lesson can certainly follow these tips and assist you to get it up. So you have to keep in mind that preparation, presentation, and practice, evaluation, and extension. These are important pointers while you are preparing a lesson plan to work on. So speaking practice lesson plan: preparation, presentation, practice, evaluation and extension. So keep in mind, when you are intending to practice speaking skills and want to master the same, all you have to do is just get to this understanding about the fact it all starts with the planning. That is, how well would you prepare and get that specific pointers towards making your speaking effective. And then we can focus on presentation, that is whom with the set of people that you would like to present this topic as such. And then moving on, practice with the effort that you're supposed to go ahead and make your entire speaking skill as a experience, a complete good experience. And then we have evaluation, where you evaluate yourself, where you do your own self analysis, or else you end up asking feedback to somebody else, where you can be evaluated and you have to work towards your evaluation. And next is your extension, that is how to extend the lesson plan practice with regard to maybe having a change in your plan, or maybe with regard to getting a second person as a dialogue in the lesson practice. So keep in mind, so this brings towards the end of this particular speaking sessions. Now that we are moving towards getting started to yet another topic in the next video. Let's do a quick summary of what we have learned today. So, we started with the important interview tips, and then we moved on to understand what is speaking, why speaking is important, and the 4 language skills of learning any language for that matter, and there was a specific methodology which was shared in order to learn language and master your learning effectively. So, this brings to the end of the video tutorial. Thank you for watching. If you have any specific question, do write us back. Thank you.